afternoon, whatever time it is when you are watching this. Thank you so much for joining me. This is episode 4 of the Work.knits podcast. My name is Lauren and I am joining you from the southwest of the United Kingdom in the kind of Somerset area. And I'm recording this in the evening, so I hope that the kind of evening cozy vibes work for people, don't put people off. I do tend to try and record these episodes during daylight hours, in kind of lunch breaks, etc. between work, but just the way it's gone this week, that there just hasn't been time for that. So I hope you don't mind me recording in the evening. If anyone takes offence to it, do let me know down in the comments, and I'll definitely take that on board going forwards. But this is just how I managed to fit everything in this week. So if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back to spend some more time with me. If you're a new viewer, welcome. This is still a relatively new space online, and I am aware there are so many new podcast episodes and new podcasters out there in the knitting space, as well as the plethora of amazing long-term podcasters. So very, very grateful that you are spending time here with me today. I really don't take that for granted, and every watch, every comment really goes so far in feeling like I'm sharing the joy of knitting with all of you. On that note, in exciting news, we are doing our first giveaway on this podcast channel. So I am thinking of doing a 500 subscriber giveaway. We are a little way from there, but hopefully that will kind of all sync up nicely with my trip to a yarn festival at the end of April. I will give more details all about the yarn festival closer to the time, but I'm heading over to Wales with my mum and my aunt to go and attend my first fibre festival, and I thought that'd be a great opportunity to kind of pull together a nice little package for a giveaway. And actually, hopefully by hosting the giveaway now, if we get to 500 subscribers by the time I go at the end of April, then I can probably pull the winner before I go, which means the winner can give me an idea of the kind of colour palette they like. I don't know about anybody else, but you know, when I enter giveaways or get involved in knit-alongs, that's always my one thing, is like I don't want to deprive someone else who would have loved that item of that item if it's not really in my wheelhouse, but it's kind of sometimes hard because you don't really get to choose. So hopefully this way around, the winner will get to choose the colours. So that's my idea for a giveaway. In order to enter, please subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below this video or any of my next few videos. Each comment will count as an entry, so people can enter as many times as they like. If you can go over and follow me on Instagram, that would be great, but it's not compulsory. And I will then use a random comment picker to pick a comment from any video between now and the end of April, or I'll give an exact date, but let's say now and the 20th of April. So that's kind of roughly how it'll work. And in terms of comment, if you'd like to make it themed, would love to hear from you. One thing you're really, really excited about knitting this year. If though you just want to leave a comment with some feedback, that's equally okay, or just a little hello and letting me know where you're watching from. All of those would be really exciting and much appreciated. So let's get started to core podcast content. So as I mentioned, I am recording this in the evening, so I'm all tucked up in my Brighter sweater by Junko Okamoto. I hope I've got that right. I always get it wrong, whether it's bright or brighter. I always get it around the wrong way. Doesn't matter what I seem to do. But yes, this is knit up in Holst Garn in their Super Soft in the silver grey colourway. It's held double and knit up on 4mm needles and maybe some 5mm for sections of it. It's got beautiful cabling down the arm. Ooh, it's so strange getting used to this different lighting setup. I'm looking rather flush this evening. Messy hair. I have joggers on the bottom half. I'm getting really comfy and cosy. I hope you are too. I hope the real vibes, the kind of this is just how it is, suits with everybody. I've got a cup of herbal fruity tea in this really cute handleless mug that we picked up in Copenhagen when we visited in January. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the design studio, but it's in the centre of Copenhagen. They produce beautiful pottery. And so I brought the packet up with me and now I've dropped it on the floor. Great start. Oh, my back. Creaky chair as well. Actually, a couple of people asked me about this on Instagram. I seem to get a lot of the personal questions over on Instagram rather than in the comments, which is fine, suits me well. People asking about this chair. This chair was actually picked up from a recycling centre near us, and someone had basically said that they didn't want it anymore, but they kind of knew that it didn't need to go into landfill or get pulled apart. So we bought it for like £30. It's a beautiful wooden curved back armchair with velvet upholstery, and my idea was to reupholster it, and I just still haven't found the time. So it's looking a little sad, but I kind of love the vibe. It's a bit wobbly in places. It's got the little caster wheels on the bottom, and it's quite creaky. So in essence, probably not the best choice for a podcasting chair, but it's super comfy. It's got arms, it's got like a nice padded back to it, so it works really well for me. Talking up, I'm just gonna get resituated, cross my legs. Right. So yes, the tea is blackcurrant, rosemary, honey and hibiscus. It's supposedly high in vitamin B1 and thiamine, but I don't know, won't run that past my other half, who's a doctor, who tends to poo-poo these things. But yes, I don't know if I love the fact it's in little separate packets, but from a kind of environmental point of view. But that being said, I really struggle when I'm commuting for work to find hot drink alternatives to tea and coffee, like black tea and coffee, which obviously are quite high in caffeine and caffeine. And I find that these fruit teas are great, but then if they don't have the little individual packets, you end up having to take the whole box, and that's not very transportable, so I guess the little packets are quite convenient for that. Anyway, this is not a tea podcast, so let's get stuck into what I have to share this week and why I so desperately tried to squeeze a podcast episode into an evening. So what has been happening? Well, lots of knitting, but I don't feel like it's represented in as many products or finished objects this time around, or even as many works in progress. It's mainly been lots of knitting on one thing. So let's get stuck in. My finished object, and I really hope you guys are going to let me class this as a finished object, because the ends still aren't woven in, and I still need to do one round of crochet. But some of you who've watched my recent episode on long-term whips will remember, and I'm holding up trying to make sure you can see it with this lighting, some of you remember that I made a green raglan sweater based loosely on the petite knit stitch counts for the cast on edge and the raglan separation, and basically I used to wear this all the time, loved it, but the sleeve length was quite cropped on me. It kind of finished at the top of my forearms, and that meant that I just didn't wear it so much over this autumn-winter time. So the reason it was in my long-term whips was because I wanted to extend the sleeves, and I wanted to put a bit more, kind of build a bit more body into the neckline. You can see now it's kind of fluting out slightly, which is where I need to do one more round of crochet. But I have gone in, added another round, like set of ribbing, and then I have also gone into the sleeves and knit those a little bit longer. So I've made those modifications. This is knit in Holster Garn Super Soft in Tundra, is the shade. It is a 50% merino base, 50% Highland Falkland wool base, I think, or am I thinking Shetland? Anyway, it's a 50-50, beautiful base. I love this yarn. I use it for so many of my projects. And I think this was knit on 3.5 or 3.75mm needles, but then what I couldn't remember, and I hadn't written any notes, was whether I went down needle sizes to do the ribbing on the sleeves. I didn't think I had, so when I've picked these sleeves back up to knit them longer, I've picked them up in 3.75mm needles, and now it's kind of fluting back out slightly. I think though this is kind of a little bit wet because it's still blocking, and I'm just going to basically block that out. And I think with time it will just blend, and I'm not too fussed about it. I was going to try and put a photo in of me wearing this, but with the time it's taken to block this week and just with what else has been happening in life in general, it's not happened. So hopefully I can get a picture up on my Instagram next week and you guys can see what this looks like, maybe styled with some work trousers and some jeans to see how I can, you know, style this for work and casual. But yes, really happy with it. Lovely to have it back in my wardrobe and really excited by these sleeves. As I say, they look really bizarre on camera, but obviously with their ends, ha ha ha. But on, they hang really beautifully, so I'm really pleased. And if anyone is interested in how I made this shaping, I can try and take some photos of the decreases and try and take some photos of, yeah, how I've done this. The final thing I was going to say was, so the crochet I need to do around the neckline, I've done it on the sleeves already. And essentially all I mean by this is, so I like the bind off that involves knitting 2 stitches through the back loop on your left needle onto your right, then slipping that stitch back onto your left needle and doing the same thing, repeating. I find this gives me a really good stretchy cast off. However, what that does tend to do is tends to make your fabric flute outwards because you are adding a lot of volume in terms of stitches right on that cast off edge. I'd love at some point to spend some time experimenting with different cast ons and cast offs, but for the time being, the way that I'm kind of getting around that is I'm also going back in afterwards with a 3mm crochet hook and just crocheting a single crochet stitch going all the way around. And what I find this does is keeps the benefit of the stretch, but it also kind of creates a level of structure that stops it fluting. I actually think it kind of creates almost like a piping detail. Like I love the kind of edging that it creates. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this very well on here. But yes, very happy with this finished object. I mean, I was happy with it before, but yeah, really delighted to have it hopefully soon back in my wardrobe. I just need to weave in those ends. And as I said in my long-term whips video, the final details, sorry, that I didn't mention, was I did some ribbing just down the front, and then I also did those some kind of knit and purl stitches down the inside seam to kind of make a faux seam there. So yes, and then I think kind of, I guess, related to this project, but also thinking more broadly, I had a comment from a lovely viewer who said that they were interested in the whole comment about the armpits on this felting, which I know is not the most like lovely thing to be discussing, but again, I am who I am, and the armpits on my sweaters sometimes felt. And they were basically asking why that happens, because they've had it happen to them and they haven't heard anyone else talking about it. So just to really briefly cover that, and I will try and put timestamps below, so if you're not interested you can skip. But essentially the reason this happens, or can happen, is this is a non-superwash wool, and that the explanation does not stop there. There are multiple factors. One being this is non-superwash wool. The second being that your armpits are quite a warm space. And the third being that if your jumper doesn't have very much positive ease, it's likely that the fabric is right up in the fold of your armpit. And that means that as you are reaching for things and lifting things and doing things, you are creating friction. And the 3 conditions you need for felting something is heat, friction, and a fibre that has got a propensity to stick to itself or each other. And so all those conditions are met in the armpit of a close-fitting non-superwash jumper. So that is why the felting is not horrendous. It's just factually, it has, you know, there's no two ways about it. It has felted. It's not super obvious, and to be honest, it's created a sturdiness of the fabric that I actually really like. So as I say, I'm not that fussed. It's mainly on the inside, less on the outside. But yeah, that is my finished object for today. As I said, super sorry there's no photos of it yet. There will be. but it's kind of also a bit of a fake finished object because all I've done is gone in extended sleeves and knitted on an extra band of the collar. So yes, I'm very conscious that I don't know like how the lighting situation is working today, so, and I just don't have any other time this week to record ahead of getting this out on Friday, because I'm really enjoying this 2-weekly schedule that I've got going, and I hope you all are too, but it is just going to mean sometimes you've got to learn from your mistakes. So if the lighting isn't good, then we'll learn from that and future episodes will hopefully be better. Okay, moving on into works in progress. I have a sip of my tea first. I hope you don't mind. I hope you've got something and that you're enjoying knitting. Oh, that is really nice. They say just to brew this for 3 minutes, but I leave the bag in. It's just... oh. Okay. So the next finished object is one that I have been umming and ahhing about whether to share on here or not, when to share it. I mean, I was going to always share it, but just whether it be this episode, another episode, how best to share it, how to time everything. And as I keep mentioning, it's just been one of those weeks, and that means my hands are a little bit tied. So this is a design that I have been working on. This is going to be the first time I show it, and probably the only time I show it before final pictures and then the pattern is launched, unless I knit another version of it, which I might do. But it's not necessarily the kind of pattern launch that I would have wanted. I'm not going to keep repeating myself. It is what it is. So bear that in mind. Please use a little bit of imagination in the sense that it's still not finished. It's got to be finished in the next couple of days. So I would have to try and get some finished pictures. I am away from home for the next 4 or 5 days. So I will have to try and squeeze in some finished object pictures, and also pictures for use in the pattern when I can, when we're staying at some of our friends' house. So that's going to be intriguing, but a nice challenge. So yeah, before I show it, Mum, if you are watching, stop watching, go watch something else. I love your support, but I need you not to be watching right now. For everyone else, what I have been working on is a project for, as you may have now guessed, my mum. So it is a significant birthday for my mum in the next few days, and I have dropped something on the floor. I wanted to design something in her honour. So what I have designed is a wrap, and I am using her first name as part of the pattern name. So this design will be called the Keren wrap. That's Keren, not Karen, Keren. And the wrap is really inspired by what I perceive to be my mum's kind of design aesthetic, and also by colours that both fit with her wardrobe, that I think also really flatter her and that she kind of enjoys looking at. And I designed a wrap because my mum is a weaver and she spends a lot of time stood at her loom, and but she's kind of using her arms, so she needs lots of like freedom of movement, but then still gets a bit chilly. So I wanted something she could just drape over her shoulders, would be really easy to wear, and then also something that would go across all seasons. So a wrap it was, and I've been very inspired by the trip that James and I took to Copenhagen. I will try and insert some pictures somewhere of some of the artefacts that we saw in museums and fibre kind of shows and stuff, but lots of like blues with pinks, and that is so my colour aesthetic at the moment. If I had to pick a colour combo that like represented my mood this year, it would be blue and pink, and my mum also likes both those colours, so that is really handy. So let me, without further ado, show you what the wrap looks like. As I said, please use your imagination a little bit as it is not quite finished. I'm going to try and do this as best I can because it's also rather big. So, dun, dun, dun. Yes, it's big. It is not blocked because it is not finished. And it's also got ends to be woven in. So what is this? It is a geometric modular knit wrap. It's knit predominantly in garter stitch, really nice and squishy. I will get onto the yarns I've used in a second, but to stay on the kind of structure and construction of the wrap, and I'm just going to kind of loop it over my shoulder for now so that you can kind of see it whilst I'm chatting about it. So it's knit modular in garter stitch on 3.5mm needles, so quite a dense gauge given that the yarn is DK weight, and it involves a really small section of mosaic knitting, very, very simple, and just as I say, small sections. I have created a really even structure. I know that sounds a bit of a strange thing to say, but sometimes with modular knitting, where you are joining different sections and some sections are seamed and finished and some are just knit continuous, that creates quite an even structure to the garment or item that you're knitting. So I've worked really hard to try and make sure that this pattern has not just a visual symmetry, but also a structural symmetry, so it has equal stretch on all sides. And what that does mean though is that you are doing a lot of casting off and then picking stitches back up. But I do quite like that. I think it adds a real sturdiness and squishiness, and as I say, this kind of structural symmetry. So yes, other elements I guess in doing that cast off of each section. One positive is it makes the project, another positive I should say, is that it makes the project very portable, because you can easily finish a section and then you don't have needles attached or hanging off or lots of live stitches that can slip off. And the other thing is it makes it quite, what's the word I'm looking for, almost like goal oriented, like you can go, oh, I'm just going to do this section today, or I'm going to get 2 sections done today. So that was also very enjoyable. It will need a bit of blocking to make these last sections kind of sit nice and straight and square. They're looking a bit wobbly at the moment, but they won't in the final when they're kind of blocked out. I've done lots of testing of that and lots of sampling, so I'm very confident that that will all sit flat. And then around the edge, instead of doing an I-cord bind off, I'm actually going around, again, my favourite way of finishing things at the moment, with a 3mm crochet hook, and I'm doing a single crochet stitch just through the back leg, and what that will create is almost like, ribs not the right word, it will create like horizontal lines of it within the crochet border. It will create a border that's really flat, that doesn't curl. There's just going to be so many benefits to this border. It's a stitch I'm using a lot at the moment. I used it, for those who watched episode 3, on the outside of my hand towel for our bathroom, and it's a really stunning finish. So I'm really excited to be kind of drawing together knit and crochet skills in one project. And again, because of, the fact I'm even able to hold this up and show you when I haven't finished it is partially because, like with crochet, obviously as you do each round, it's already like finished off, so to speak. There's no kind of live stitches. So again, makes it really portable and also very efficient with yarn. So let's talk about yarn. I have knit and crocheted this in Ficalana Pernilla, I think it is. Yes, please get that right. Yes, Ficalana Pernilla, which is 100% Peruvian Highland wool, 50 grams for each ball, and each ball is 175 meters. And I've used, well, I'm on my 5th ball of the main colour in this, which is marzipan, this kind of stone creamy colour. I'm on my 5th ball and I have a lot of it, and I'm just going to keep going around the edge of this until I've used up all of this, or until I run out of time. So yeah, that's the plan for the edging of this. So I think you could probably get away with doing 4 balls, so 200 grams of a main colour DK weight yarn, but you just need to reduce some of the rows somewhere, because I've broken into this 5th ball to actually finish the main body, let alone the edging. And then I have used 3 other shades of Ficalana Pernilla. So that one that is the marzipan, which is a colour 977. The other colour I've used, which is the navy, like a navy blue colour, was colour 818. Then I have used like a corally colour, which is colour 826, and that's going to be really not showing up very well on camera in this lighting. And then I've used another colour, which is kind of a dusky rose colour, which is 830. And I think one of the things that was really interesting for me was just playing with like an ever so slight colour clash. So the coral and the dusky rose would not be two colours that I'd normally put together, but spaced out in a geometric way with kind of the gaps and the breaks with the marzipan, and then the contrast of the blue. I really liked it. That's really worked for me personally. And then the other yarn that I've used, and this is not DK weight, is the Kremke Stellaris base, and this is in colourway 114. It's kind of like a silvery gold. It's not yellow gold. It's kind of got like antique-y feel to it. And now I can't get the cone band thing back on it, but yes. So I have held this double in parts, and obviously it doesn't achieve the same gauge as the Ficalana Panilla, but because it is such fine rose and because of the modular way you're knitting it, you can kind of adapt that to work, and it adds just a really subtle glimmer, but it's not, I didn't want to hold it with the Ficalana Panilla. I wanted it to stand alone to get that crispness of that kind of metallic glint, and it's only used in 2 places on the wrap, so you could get away with substituting like a tiny mini or a scrap of some other colour. It doesn't need to be a kind of metallic yarn base if you didn't want to. So all of that to say, the Keren wrap has been a bit of a monster to knit, a very enjoyable knit that I don't know about everyone else. The minute I have a time pressure on, I can't handle that. So speaking of time pressures on this, so obviously I've got to gift this to my mum on her birthday, and I will get photos before that. I would like to launch this as a pattern, but the timing of that, I'm quite open. So if there are people who would be generous enough to offer their time in test knitting it, I would love to get this test knit. In which case, I don't think people would need to finish it in order to get the pattern to the point where it's publishable, because the way I've written it is, it's very much like a recipe, and so once you've done the first few modular sections, you kind of know whether or not, you know, that's the bulk of the instructions. But I think if I'm getting it test knit, then probably like end of April, maybe even May, which is a bit strange timing with summer weather, but hopefully if you're anything like me, you knit all year round and it doesn't really matter. And then if no one's available to test knit, which I would completely understand, we're all very busy people, then I will probably still go ahead and launch it. I'll probably launch it in like April, and I will probably do like an introductory price for the pattern, and then after a few people have done projects and I've got a bit of feedback from people, then yeah, can launch it, kind of do like a hard launch, soft launch, hard launch. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that kind of takes the pressure off people kind of feeling like they've like offered to test knit, so to speak, but still gives people access to the pattern. So yes, very excited to get this finished. It was on my mind for ages in terms of what I wanted to make, and I've been knitting on it for a few months, and yeah, I think it just really hits my mum's aesthetic as well as mine, which is kind of simple but with like an element of detail. So really enjoyed knitting this and seeing it kind of come to life, I guess. That is the Keren wrap, so you will see pictures of that being finished very soon. Keep your eyes peeled on Instagram. I'm having another sip of my tea. Okay, so whilst I was getting the Keren wrap into better shape, I had to park like most my works in progress that you guys will have seen in previous episodes, maybe on in my Instagram stories. So much stuff just got parked, which is absolutely fine. it's just the way it goes. And yeah, sometimes you have to be a monogamous knitter, which doesn't come naturally to me. That being said, it's also been quite a stressful period at work, and I need that creative outlet of something that I can like visualize and then see coming to life. That process for me is the bulk of the creative outlet that knitting provides. So I needed some projects on my needles that were not as time consuming, that had no deadlines attached, that I could just pick up and absorb myself in to break up the working day and break up knitting on the Karen wrap. So dipping down as always. That is not what I meant to pick up, that's okay. So one thing I have on the needles is another version of my Time to Decompress socks, which was a pattern I launched in the last few weeks. Thank you so much to those who've purchased a copy and supported me kind of in these early days of my knitwear design and pattern design journey. It's been really, really kind, and obviously it was test knit by absolutely lovely viewer, Janet, who I'm just so grateful to, because the pattern is in good shape, very much because of all her feedback. So thank you, Janet. So yes, I'm knitting another version of my Time to Decompress socks. I'm just at the point where I'm picking up stitches for the gusset, so it's a slightly odd place to show you on the needles, but I have knit the cuff and the leg. This is, for those who haven't seen previous episodes or the pattern yet, this is a kind of I guess simple but intricate looking colourwork design using flea stitch, and then also kind of a kind of slightly like faux rib motif type thing that I've come up with. These socks are knit top down with a heel flap and gusset, and I'm knitting this pair with a 72 stitch circumference for my other half. I'm knitting them in the Holst Garn sock base. I can't remember what they call that. Just in like the natural colour. That is my contrast, and then my main colour is a crazy shoppable cake which gradiates colours. So yeah, that's these. I don't know again how well camera lighting etc is going, but hopefully you can see that okay. So far so good. I've just got to finish picking up the stitches for the gusset, and then yeah, we'll let you know how I progress, but nice to be able to make a pair for him. So that'll be some train knitting for tomorrow. I'm back into the city tomorrow. Got a bit of a long day. Planned engineering works. For those who are living in the UK, maybe you can sympathise. There's been a lot of train strikes recently, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely support people in campaigning for their working conditions, but the long and the short is it's made my working conditions a lot worse. So on a selfish level, yeah, there's been train strikes, and then when there's not train strikes, there's planned engineering works, and suffice it to say, I'm up at 5:20 tomorrow morning to drive to a train station that skips out the section of planned engineering works, and then it's going to be a very long day. Anyway, stop moaning. I will be doing more work on those socks tomorrow on the train, I'm sure. The other thing I've been working on to just give myself headspace is a highly cabled bib / collar. I'm smiling because for those of you who watched my last episode, this was in my stash acquisitions or yarn acquisitions piece. I said I had purchased some Kate Davies Ard Tier in I had 4 skeins of the colourway Glameig, and the yarn is 60% Highland wool, 40% alpaca. 50 grams is 65 meters, and I just said I was really itching to cast on a cabled bib, so that is exactly what I did. I'm going to inch a little bit closer, which is probably not what's going to give you the best view of my complexion and the massive circles under my eyes, but hey. So, blocking out my face hopefully so that you can see this. There we go. And you can kind of see that. Lighting problems. So if I grab this, This is a Women's Institute knitting stitches dictionary. I won't like show you all the instructions, but it just gives you everything through from kind of knit and purl textures, through ribs, through colourwork ribs, lace patterns, lace panels, lace edging, cables, bobbles, everything. The book was originally published in 1983, and I think this is a 1983 edition, and I don't think they make it anymore. I mean, there are so many stitch dictionaries out there, you can definitely find one that suits you, but this is the one that I bought for like £2 from a charity shop when I was 7, and actually for the first like couple of years of knitting, I just played around trying to teach myself some of these stitches. So yeah, I find this book really useful. The patterns are all based on the stitch patterns being knit flat, and particularly with the cables, it's all on like pearl bubble background. So yeah, to knit this, which I'm knitting on 4mm needles, essentially the process I've gone through is I was trying to find a sweater pattern that I'd already purchased that had like shoulder shaping that I thought would suit a bib. Sorry, when I say a bib or a collar, like for those who are Canadian, US based, you might call it a dickie. Essentially something that goes under your coat that kind of mimics the top of a sweater, but you're not actually wearing a sweater. So I took the contrast pattern by Petite Knit, which I've already knit up as a sweater, and I remembered it had like a saddle shoulder, so a panel of knit stitches that come kind of straight on your shoulder, and then the increases come off either side. So I've used that pattern and the basic stitch counts, and I cast on below the neckline, or what would be the ribbing, cast on that stitch count, and then basically I've been increasing along the saddle shoulder. I've got maybe 4 more rounds until I'm at the stitch count I want for the width, and then I will just knit each side flat. So this has involved taking the cable instructions that I want and first converting them to in the round, then trying to get them all to line up because you're doing different cables all within the same round, and then now I also need to be able to convert the instructions back to flat, and when I convert them back to flat knitting, I need to make sure that line 2 of one cable lines up with line 13 of another cable. So a little bit of brain gymnastics going on, but quite enjoying that because it's making me very like involved. I get very absorbed, which is what I need right now. I need like the opposite of mindless knitting. I need like heavily involved knitting. So what cables have I chosen? And again, I don't know how I'm going to be able to see this. So starting from the outside edge, I'm about to include another ribbed panel here when I've got enough stitches. So for that ribbed kind of column, I guess, I'm using, they call it in this book like a fancy rib. Basically it's a knit one, slip one, knit one. So you've got this slip stitch going down the centre of your rib. It's beautiful on a pearl background. Then in between those I've got a 6-stitch plait cable, then another fancy rib, then some pearl background, then a 9-stitch plait cable thing, then this thing which has like multiple different names. It's like a oxo medallion or something, and it's got seed stitch in the middle, then another 9-stitch plait, then a fancy rib, then 6-stitch plait, then a fancy rib, and that's just one side. You then repeat all of that on the other side too. So anyway, really loving this. The yarn is working out beautifully. You definitely won't be able to see in this lighting, but hopefully when I take some pictures for Instagram, when this has progressed a bit more, you'll be able to see that whilst the yarn itself is like a kind of chestnut, warm brown, it's got a halo of these like fuzzy fibres that are more like a gold. They're beautiful. So I can't speak highly enough of the yarn. Worsted weight, beautiful drape, really smooth when you're knitting. The one thing I would say is, like, for cables, you want something that's smooth enough that you're not going to be like yanking the stitches around. At the same time, if you're someone that likes to cable without a cable needle, you want stitches that are going to stick enough that that's not just going to like slip out your fingers. I'd say this is borderline a bit too slippery for knitting without a cable needle. just because the cables I've designed are quite chunky cables, so you're really having to stretch the stitches. So yeah, I've tried bits of it without a cable needle, bits with. I think it's more comfortable to knit with a cable needle for this. But yeah, other than that, as I say, that's not really a criticism of the yarn, that's just my pairing of the yarn with the design. It's just an observation. But yeah, really enjoying this. So I'm also going to take this away with me this weekend to our friend's house, although I'm going to put myself on a like strict no working on this until the Karen wrap is completely done, because I know I'll just get absorbed. But yeah, so I've just got to do a couple more rows, then knit both sides flat. I think I will then need to do some sort of edging on the outside edge, but probably not along the bottoms, just because you've got these shoulder stitches on the saddle and that edge is not really accounted for. The edge at the front and the back, I've got this fancy rib going down the edge, but yeah, the shoulder seam one is not so accounted for. So we'll see what I do there. Maybe I can figure out something smart to make that work without having to go back in and edge the whole thing. And then yeah, I'll pick back up for the collar and I'll do that last. So I will try and make that as deep as I possibly can, hopefully with a rollover. Yeah, I think that's everything on this. Do let me know if people are interested in me writing it up as a pattern. I've got all the notes. But yeah, when I finished it, you'll have to let me know what you think. But I haven't got one of these in my wardrobe, so I'm quite excited to own one. I think I'll get a lot of use out of it, particularly when it's that period where you're like transitioning into wearing coats, but you're maybe not cold enough to wear like a full-on sweater undercoat. And I think sometimes the necklines can just look really empty. So I think this will be really good. And then in the winter, it will be just like yet another layer to really make sure you're kind of blocking out all the wind. So I'm very excited about that. Speaking of the wind, it's whistling in our chimney. Okay, so that was my second work in progress that I've kind of let myself actually work on during this time. So I'll be packaging all those whips up for my commute into the city tomorrow and then for the weekend more broadly. And I think that brings me quite nicely onto some kind of future knitting plans that I'm actually actioning, because I spoke about a couple in the last episode, and then obviously I've just been focusing on the Karen wrap, so I haven't got to any of them yet. So after another sip of tea, I'll move on to future knitting plans, imminent future knitting plans. Okay, my tea's getting a bit cold, so I might have to take a couple of sips on this as I go. So I mentioned in my last episode that I wanted to cast on a Cargill cow. This is a design by the Creia Bear, who is Rebecca, who's based in Scotland, I believe. Beautiful cow with like a kind of, you know, you like dip down into the row below to pull up stitches, that kind of stitch pattern in kind of columns. It looks lovely. So I'm going to purchase that pattern and I'm trying to figure out what yarn to use for it. If you're looking for inspo, for comments to enter this giveaway, maybe this is a good one for you. But I actually have a couple of yarn options which I was going to run by you or get your input, see what you think. So one yarn option, so the pattern calls for a light fingering weight yarn held with a mohair. I'm sure you could take out the mohair and just use like a DK weight or a sport. But I have got a couple of balls of mohair, not hanging around, that's the wrong word, but I've like used them in other projects and I've got bits left over. So one option, and again, I don't know how much the lighting this evening is going to do these colours justice. We've got like a pink combo, that's option one. And this is Gepard Garn in like a hot pink colour. And then this is Sandnes Garn Sunday fingering weight base. This is not the petite knit version. This is colour 4343. So that's 100% merino wool, quite a lightweight fingering yarn. So that's one option, pink. The other option, which was the yarn I accidentally picked up earlier thinking it was something else. The other option is this. So this is Isaiah Highland Peruvian wool. A really lightweight 2-ply fingering weight yarn. This is in their kind of natural cream base. And then the Isaiah mohair, and this is their kind of white base, but it's got a beautiful like mushroomy pinky undertone to it. It's not a cold white, it's a very warm white. And the two together, whilst they look a bit strange on camera, when held together, they just create this really warm neutral that kind of appears white to the naked eye, or kind of from a distance. So this is another option. This is left over from my contrast sweater when I knitted up originally, not in slightly altered collar bib form, but in actual sweater form. And then, excuse me, and then this is also Isaiah Highland wool, but in the shade Curry, already pre-wound up with Gepard yarn in like a golden colour. That's the mohair. This is pre-wound together because this originally formed part of my balloon cardigan by Petite Knit, which I then frogged and made into a slip over, but there was some yarn left over. I have a bit more than this, don't worry, but that is the other option. Excuse me, I think I've got mohair stuck in my throat. Okay, more tea. Oh, that's better. But yeah, that is some of my future knitting plans. The other future knitting plans, if you came along and spent some time with me when I went through my stash recently, one of the combos that I pulled out was some, is it Rico Design, like super luxurious sock, which is kind of like a very fluffy, light, I've got it in a light grey shade, but it's kind of like a super fluffy, quite thick sock yarn. So I was going to pair that with some skeins of Sandnesgarn Tresco that I picked up in January. There was a big sale on at Sommerfuggen, the yarn shop in Copenhagen, and I bought like 8 balls of that yarn. So I think I'm going to use those two together to make one of Andrea Mary's patterns. I still haven't decided which one, but probably one of the ones where she gets you to hold Suri, and instead I'll hold that Rico Design luxury sock. And that will be something that I kind of want to take the yarn with me this weekend as like a kind of motivator for when I finish the Karen wrap. But at the same time, I'm just thinking about like amount of bags, and if I'm also taking a sock and several other bits and pieces. Hello Bee. Hello gorgeous. If I'm also taking like socks and my bib as well, it's going to be a lot to carry around. Sorry, Bee's just moved the tripod. She's very curious to get involved. So yeah, I don't know whether like in terms of carrying stuff that's going to be a bit extreme. But an Andrea Mary colourwork sweater has been on my list for a while. They've been so popular, and sometimes that like makes me question my choice in wanting to knit one. I wonder, am I just wanting to knit it because everyone else is? But I think having really looked at my wardrobe, there is a gap. So I think one of her patterns will fit that nicely. And then I have Friday off work, so which is when hopefully this video will be going live, and I'm planning on going to a couple of the London yarn shops because I don't get to shop for yarn very much in person anymore. So I think I might take the opportunity of being in London but not working to go yarn shopping, which is dangerous. But I might head to Loop, which is up in the kind of northeast of London, and then I might go to Beautiful Knitters, which is in Pimlico, which is more like South London. It's a bit of a commute between the two of them, so we'll see if I can fit both into an afternoon with like shop opening times and stuff, but if I can, I will. And if I go to them, I think I want to pick up some more Knitting for Olive, their fine merino, to go with some that was gifted to me over Christmas, and I've just not quite got the right quantities in different colours to make something. I've got like one ball of each, but unless I wanted to go for like a gradient of stripes, that's not, I want more of one colour to act as a base. So pick up at least one more ball of that, and then yeah, I'm just excited to be able to put different colour combinations together a bit, I think. So having said in my last episode there would not be loads of yarn acquisitions on this podcast, there may yet be some more, so maybe that's yet another reason not to take wool for the Andrea Mary sweater, whichever one I choose, with me this weekend, because I'll have loads of yarn, hopefully, that I've acquired on Friday. So yeah, but that's going to be a real treat for me. I've not spent an afternoon yarn shopping in a little while, so that'll be lovely. But yeah, before I leave you guys, I was going to say one other exciting thing that happened recently, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see these very well, but I've got this beautiful vase of flowers next to me, and those were given to me by a lovely viewer and actually one of my very close friends' mum, who watched an episode of this podcast and then really sweetly wanted sewing lessons off me. So this weekend just been, I headed back towards my family home and went and spent some time with them, teaching them how to sew. It was a really nice experience for me to share my passion for making things and to be able to share that with someone else and see what they're wanting to make. It was lovely. So I can definitely see more teaching in my future, which I never would have expected, but really enjoyed that. And she really didn't need to get me flowers, but very kindly gave me this beautiful bunch of flowers for the session. So that's just something else that we've been up to recently. I am probably going to leave it there. Bee is in the background trying to attack one of my plants, which is a bit upsetting, and the light is obviously not what I would normally want it to be, but I hope you have enjoyed this kind of cosy evening session with me. I hope wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is, that this has brought you a little bit of peace and joy and inspiration. I hope you're all staying safe and well, and just thank you again for joining me here. I look forward to seeing the comments and the entries into the giveaway. I will confirm the date in the next episode, which will be in 2 weeks' time, but for now let's go with the 20th of April as the deadline. You can comment on any video that I make between now and then, and you'll be entered into the giveaway provided we hit 500 subscribers. Fingers crossed. Right, on that lovely note, I will love you and leave you. Have a lovely rest of the week, and I will say bye for now.